welcome to today's episode of Decisions Now. I'm your host, Erin Pearson, along with my co-host, Rigvinath Chevala. Today, we are so excited. We have Olivia Gambelin with us, who is the founder of Ethics Intelligence. We're really excited to have you here. In particular, we haven't really covered much about ethics in AI yet, and you are a fantastic person to have naturally on the topic. So we're really excited to drill into that today. I guess just to start us off and to help out the audience, could you just give like a quick definition on when you talk about ethics in AI, intelligence, data analytics, and everything?
Yeah,
what do you actually mean when you say that?
So I'm going to come at this from a perspective. So my background's in ethics. I'm a trained AI ethicist, but really what that means is I practice ethics in the context of artificial intelligence. So I give the definition of what is ethics to people.
Mm-hmm.
And ethics, really, if you're boiling it down, it's the study of right and wrong and what constitutes a good versus a bad action. What we're talking about when it comes to ethics and technology is just the decisions around our technology on what makes a better product, what makes better technology versus technology that's kind of or, hitting headlines on scandals. That's really ethics, is that tool that's helping you differentiate and determine those decisions.
That makes sense. Yeah. And when I looked through your website, Olivia, what caught my eye was how you position ethics as a service that's not just technology or just AI, but even broader than that. So which is amazing. And I've not seen, right, exactly. And I think the right and wrong perhaps is also cultural to some degree. But at a broader level, I'm guessing it's the same baseline.
Yeah, so you're asking like a huge existential question that happens in ethics. But I like to simplify it down to, we've got these universal truths. So if you look at all the policies out there, if you look at all the companies that have these high level, basically ethics principles, they're all the same. So you'll see transparency, no matter what country policy you're looking at. Even everything from the UK to China, transparency exists on all of those policies. How transparency is carried out and the details of it change per culture. But it doesn't mean that it's not transparency. So we have those roots, and then the context of the culture helps us understand, well, what does it look like in terms of execution?
Makes sense. That's great.
I think one thing also is with the rise of AI in today's world, and I think that a lot of people also feel like there's a lack of visibility into it as well. So there's a need for ethics within it. And I think we phrased it as like a ticking time bomb for a lot of companies as well. Like if you don't get ahead of it, you're going to be part of that scandal in the headline that you mentioned. So what do you see as what has been the shift in the market perspective
it's definitely
on
gone
this topic?
From, oh, this is nice to have, or it's an interesting conversation, or, the philosophers in their armchairs are at it again, to being front and center of conversations around development in AI. So it's no longer just, there's that thing called ethics. Now it's a just exploding field called responsible AI safety and risk. We all are under that same name. But we're all focusing on the same point. And there's just been this absolute amazing uptick of people going from, that's a cool conversation, to this matters and this is important. And now I'm trying to figure out how to do it rather than just why I should be doing it. So it's been a very cool shift to see. And really that shift has really just been coming in, I want to say the past 2 years or so. We've really seen that trajectory take off.
That's right. And in fact, I'm working on an article on kind of a similar topic about explainable AI versus ethical AI. And I think one of the, at least the thoughts that we were debating internally was which comes first, right? Do we need algorithms that are transparent, where you can actually explain it and then move on to making them ethical, or do you do it the other way? And I don't know what your view is, but that'd be interesting to hear what your take on that is.
Yeah, and I'm really curious to hear what you guys came up with. I think so off the top of my mind, I would say explainability first, because that allows for someone like myself, an ethicist, to come in and fully be able to work with the system and say, okay, here's where we need to put in some tweaks. Here's where we've got some of the ticking time bombs or potential there, versus if it's not explainable, it makes it a lot harder. we can still do our work, but it involves a lot more digging. It's a lot more, did I get everything? I'm not sure because I can't see into the model. But I'm curious what you guys came up with in terms of that answer.
No, yeah, it was a similar consensus that, explainable comes first. And to your point, if AI is a black box, you can still control the inputs, like the training data, the test data, and still make it somewhat ethical to your point. But then you don't know if the output is still integral or with integrity, I guess, right? So that's what we also arrived at, and it's an important distinction because most of AI that people understand today is really not transparent. It's still a black box, and so it's hard to trust. And then you put the ethical lens on top of that, and people are like, I don't even trust what it was doing. And now you're saying, is it ethical or not, right?
You get all these layers, and then it's having to explain to people, even with that transparency for the sake of it does not result in ethical. In ethics, you can have a completely transparent model doing really bad things. You just know it's doing the bad things,
Right.
but that doesn't make it the ethical part. You need to actually still engage with ethics. But when you have the transparent, when you have that explainability, it makes it that much easier. Instead of feeling like this giant monster, like, okay, I at least know what part of this giant chaos mountain I'm looking at, what part I have to climb, rather than I have to take the whole thing down.
Makes sense.
And Olivia, I think you had mentioned that you actually have like a three-step process, if I'm not mistaken, and in ways that people can design an AI ethics strategy within their company so they can actually get started.
So when it comes to implementing AI ethics, you're looking at three main points, and that really is where the strategy comes from. At the bottom line, you're looking at the people. So what type, you're basically asking who's building the AI. And what that means is, are they trained? Do they understand what kind of risks they should be looking for? Do they understand what kind of opportunities they should be looking for to build a better piece of tech, a better system? So that's focused on training and making sure people have the skill set and the understanding and even just the vocabulary. It also looks at, is there a conducive culture within the company? Are people curious to approach these challenges rather than judgmental or afraid of them? That's the people level. So you're looking at ensuring that who is building your technology is equipped to be able to do so in a way that's embedding ethics. Then the next step up, you get process, and that's looking at frameworks. And that's asking really how, you know, who's building your technology. Now the question is, how are they building it? So you're looking at frameworks, you're looking at workflows, you're looking at policies. These are all guiding tools, you can say. We're starting to see a lot of automation actually at this level, and some great tools come out of that, come out of the ethical AI space to help automate aspects of this process level where you're checking, let's say you're using a fairness framework with your ML ops tool. Super simple, easy to implement. Once you have the people in place and you understand fairness in the context of your company, you're helping automate and be able to keep up on that solution with the process level. Really important. Last level and last stage of that strategy is technology. And people always ask, like, well, why doesn't technology come first? That's what we're working on. Well, technology actually comes last in this strategy level, in this strategy, because if you don't have people that are equipped to build the technology in an ethical way, it's not going to get built. But if you have people that are equipped, but they don't know how, it's, again, not going to get built. It's a lot of frustration that keeps trickling back down. Versus with the technology, that's the last point. That is, we have everything in place. So when we make decisions around our technology, we have the right people putting it into action, and they know how to. And so when you're looking at that technology level, that's when you get all of the big existential questions around your technology. Like, should we be collecting this data set and using it in this way? What does this model feature include? And what kind of bias should we be looking for in here? At that layer, you're seeing a lot of more towards the direction of auditing, but also a lot of companies go the route of like mini think tanks, even of what in the world are we building, and what is this going to do? What is the impact it's going to have? But it goes people, process, technology. Who's building it? How are they building it? What are they building?
That's a pretty solid framework, and you know, I'm assuming there are organizations that you work with that have implemented some of this strategy. Is there like an example or two that kind of manifests itself to an end use case? Because I've heard of like one example on how the commercial lending works or even consumer lending works, right? But are there other areas where ethics plays an important role?
Pretty much everywhere. I mean, I am biased on this one, and I will admit I have that bias, and I know I do. Ethics is always going to be an important aspect in building a company and building technology, vice versa. A great case example I can use. We worked with a large financial institution and their data science teams. They had 4 data science teams in total. All 4 of these teams, we go in, we're talking with their data scientists, and they're like, fairness is important to us. We're overwhelmed. I'm like, okay, what's going on? And they're like, we keep trying all these metrics and nothing makes sense. And we keep trying all these things. But like my friend over in the other department doesn't know what we're doing. And so we're crossing hairs and everyone's getting confused. And we kind of just gave up. And so we looked at that and we're like, okay, well, your people are ready to go, clearly. Your data scientists are already trying to implement different metrics. They're already trying to put fairness into action, but they're getting stuck at the process because they're sitting there going, I don't know when this goes in here and I don't know what metric I'm using. I think in total, they are using like close to somewhere around 15 different metrics at different points in time. So really didn't have a way to consistently look back and go, okay, this worked or that didn't, when they were tweaking their model. So what we sat down to do is develop a workflow, a fairness workflow with them. We first set out to go, okay, what does fairness mean for you and your for this financial institution and the people you're looking to serve? What does fairness mean? Okay, great. We got that definition. Now, where in your workflow do you have to check? And what are you checking for? And we didn't go in and design a whole new workflow. We just looked at the workflow that already existed across those 4 teams of data scientists and went, okay, at this point in time, you need to go through these three points, these 3 boxes, check them off, go talk and make sure that you signed off on these. Good to go. All right. Document it because you get to go look back and improve on your decisions and know where things can go differently, and then continue on to the next checkbox. But that workflow really turned things around for them because all of a sudden they could start improving their models in terms of fairness, which they saw this great increase for their customers and their user base because those users had a stronger trust of, okay, I get this. They're doing some working on fairness. We're seeing better turnaround in terms of loan and credit and all those things. So really had that great knock-on effect for that financial institution.
Cool.
I think that's great. I think something else that you probably see in the market, or I would expect, is with the rise of like social media, just in general. I think a lot of people, like, they have instant information, it's on demand. They get a lot of different sources and perspectives on things. So just across, society as a whole, there's greater transparency on everything. So there is this element of they need to trust businesses, and there is definitely a change in consumer behavior to want to work with people that are not only like doing good, but they're also being very clear about it, because you see clearly all these scandals that are happening in the market today and how businesses can go easily under from all of that. So I think that was just like a fantastic example of it. I was just curious, within your framework that you had outlined as well, though, is there, for most of the companies that you work with, do you find that they typically are focused in one of those areas? Like, is it typically the people that needs to change, the process or the technology, or is it just totally varying depending on who you're talking to?
It varies a lot because each company is different. You have that saying where every good family or every functional, healthy family is healthy in the same way, but is dysfunctional in very different ways. Kind of the same case here. We're like, what in the world did we walk into this time? But in terms of trends, I'd have to say that the larger the company, the more often we're working on process. They're really stuck on just getting that process down and knowing who to talk to, when to talk to, make sure that the different departments aren't siloed. When it comes to smaller size companies, the smaller the size, the more often we're actually working on technology, their technology layer. They are usually pretty set already with their people and their culture. but they're more focused on these bigger questions like, should we even be doing this? And the people layer really just is across the board. That gets built into almost everything, either in the fact of helping with the culture, or let's train you up on this terminology so that you guys are equipped and can have conversations together.
Yeah. Though I guess I would imagine if they're bringing in an AI ethicist, they probably at least have a strong enough culture that they can admit that they need it, and they have this ability to just have a self perspective on that as well. So maybe the people part of the companies that are not bringing them in.
One day we're going to be. I have to say right now we're very fortunate to be working with companies that are so excited and so willing to go headfirst and really lead their industry in terms of embracing ethics and bringing it into the forefront and really being the ones that are building our hero stories and our success stories. I know one day that we're going to reach the point where we're going to be working with people that are not so excited to have us there, which will be an interesting challenge for us. But hey, we've spent this entire time figuring out how to talk about ethics, which is a very gray field in black and white in tech. So we can do it.
Yeah, but I think that's a good point you bring up, right? What happens in the future? And I like the way you position yourselves too. Is it's two-pronged, right? One is you got to mitigate your existing risks with making sure that your people, process, tech is taken care of from an ethics standpoint, but then you flip it and say, now let's use this for innovation. Can you kind of shine some more light on that? Like, I'm curious what that looks like from an innovation standpoint.
Yeah. And this is one of the reasons why I love ethics, because it is that two-pronged tool where one side we're looking at what could go wrong. Really just kind of like doomsday. Yeah. Oh my goodness, all of these risks and ideas, and what if the robot takes over and so on. Those are valid risks. Sometimes they're a little crazy, but it's good to flesh that out, because what that does is show you this is where we need to put in our safeguards. This is where we put in our checks. This is where we make sure that we are looking at, we put the model into deployment. Oops, it went off the rails. Let's pull that back and fix it again. Right. Like, you've got the right safeguards in place. But then on the flip side, you have ethics in terms of innovation. And that's looking at what can go right. And what I mean by that is looking at what kind of values do your users have. Right now, we're seeing huge trends, like you were saying, Erin, in terms of users and customers wanting to trust and needing to trust in their technology. Great. Trust is an important factor. That is an important value. Well, how do we design our technology? How do we design our offering, our company, that whole picture in a way that inspires trust? So with that, we're looking at data privacies and your data strategy. We're looking at, like, are you designing your data collection with opt-in versus opt-out features, even down to those details? We're looking at, is there a way for your customers to have any type of feedback to you, getting that transparent communication going? Other ones look at responsibility. Is there someone in the company that a user can contact if something's gone wrong? These are all values that you look at forward facing, and you go, I want my technology, I want my company to embody that. All right, let's talk about how you design for that in a very practical way. And that's when ethics starts to unlock that innovation, because you're not just looking at what are we technically capable of, it's what are we technically and ethically capable of, and let's get creative so we can reach that higher standard.
I think that's a great way to look at it. I think especially when a lot of people might take this, and I think as you started, they think of it as a constraint. Like, you have to be very transparent about certain things, or you have to use certain practices in what you're doing. But I think some of the most successful businesses also use it to build a competitive advantage within what they're doing. They use it to get actually creative about the thought processes they have, or how they're actually interacting with their clients, or the type of conversations that they can even have with their clients as well, because they're not afraid of being too honest with them, because they don't really have that much to hide relatively. So do you have any really cool examples of clients that you've worked with that have used the innovation use case to their advantage?
A lot of them, actually. So one of the ones that too many come to mind. One of the ones that immediately comes to mind, so we'll start there, is a company called Rasa Technologies, and they develop an open source platform that people use to create chatbots. Really cool technology. It's widely used. They are out there setting the standard on how to create chatbots, that open source accessibility. And one of the things that we worked with them on was what's so important to them is their developer community, and having that developer community in a way that Rasa is a source of information and inspiration for their developers. And so Rasa looked at, well, where does our responsibility lie? So if someone's taking our open access, like our open sourced platform and creating a chatbot off of it, where does our responsibility lie if that chatbot is used on medical predictions or something that it shouldn't be used in? So we're looking at them going, okay, you want that trust and you want that line of responsibility, but in a way that you're going to inspire your developers. What can we do? Well, turns out Rasa already had this fantastic resource of training for their developers. So anyone in their developer community could access information on how to develop a chatbot using the Rasa system. We're like, guys, you've already got your university built. Like they called it their university. You already got your university built. It's really simple to start embedding in these ethics practices where it's a part of the lessons that are taught. It's not separate, but like if someone's going, how do I use this platform to create a chatbot for a medical company, then embed in that training. Cool. You're using this in the medical sense. And that means you are not giving any diagnoses with it. You are pointing people in these directions. You never give medical facts. All of these points where it's like we stress tested the ethics for them. And then we're able to sit down and that gave them the ability to go, okay, we're going to create a stronger developer community now in a way that is creating better chatbots through our developer community, but also better return for us because there's that trust in their developer community and in their customers. So it's just that knock-on effect over and over again of building off of something they already had.
And yeah, that's pretty cool because you said it's not a separate thing. It's actually embedded in the training itself. So if you're telling them how to do X, Y, and Z, embedded in that message is ethics. That's pretty cool and innovative.
Yeah. It's really helpful that way too, because then it's just a natural part of the process. It's not like, oh, I forgot to do the ethics thing. It's like, this is just good business. This is good practice.
Absolutely. It's like the financial institutions when you join a new bank or something, you go through that whole anti-fraud, all of that no disclosure kind of thing. It's similar. I mean, that's all embedded in every training course you do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If you were to give a tip to somebody who was getting started, whether it was they were, maybe they've just been brought in at a new organization and they're leading a big team of people, what would be like the first tip that you would have them look at if they were trying to implement this themselves?
Educate yourself first and foremost. There is huge amount of grassroots effort going on in responsible tech. Everywhere you look, there is content available in order to understand what is my role, who am I in terms of my responsibilities of helping bring responsible tech into my company. What are the practical ways that I can engage with? There's tons of research and education out there. There's no lack there. The second tip I would actually give on that is find a community to engage with, because there is tons of content. So it is overwhelming. It can be very overwhelming of, I have to do all this all at once. No, find one place to start and slowly start chipping away. Otherwise, if you try and do it all at once, it is terrifying because it's a huge mountain that you're climbing. But as you start to engage little by little, it's not really a mountain. It's kind of like a nice stroll up. And you find all of this great ability and resource within your own team and your own self being able to chip away at that. There's also, of course, different companies I can say to reach out to and everything, but really make sure that you have that education, that you understand what you're talking about. In the sense of, you probably won't reach the level of being an ethicist, but you can understand and know the principles and the policies and the values that you're looking at and how to engage with them. And then join a community that helps you start to sort out, okay, what really should be my priority versus everything's on fire and I have to fix it right now.
I do have one more question for you, Olivia. There's something that happened recently in the news, and it's a slightly different perspective, I think, than what we've been talking about. I don't know if you heard about it, but there was an article that was published by a writer at The Atlantic, and the author used an AI-generated image that it created an AI-based illustration, and he posted it on Twitter, and it got a lot of backlash on it. Not because there was anything wrong with like the AI itself, but because the people, like the artists that get hired to create the images, got very upset that why would this type of company be using it? Now, there is a lot of background and context on the department that he was in within the company. It had a different process because they were like the digital team or something. So there were some like more nuanced details that naturally when you post it on Twitter don't get highlighted when people get upset. Is that the type of risk or the type of backlash that you work with companies on in terms of if they're also using AI to try, whether it's cost saving methods or it's just trying to be innovative and doing something fresh, that it might just be that it gets a lot of personal backlash from a market that they wouldn't have even expected?
We try and catch that before it happens. We have something called the EIFF Export. So we supply ethics boards and committees to companies. We do it through our own platform, and it really works almost like a product in that sense, but it's connecting right people, right time. And in that case, you would bring a question of, hey, we're gonna publish this article using an AI driven piece of art to your board and say, thoughts. And your board would go, cool. All right. Here's some potential really cool things that can come of this. Here are probably some backlash you're going to see from artists. Because it's, I want to say it's well known, but it's well known in the artistic community that there are these frustrations happening of where are we going to be in 10 years? Are we even going to exist? Or has AI taken over just that artistic creativity side? Where is that happening? Versus, I guess it's not as well known outside of the artistic community. But if you bring it to your board goes, yeah, you might need to put some disclaimers with them, or you might want to not necessarily put this one out until you put a couple of other things in place, just because you're putting yourself at risk for some severe backlash with this. If that's not caught, or if we're coming in retrospectively, then it's, all right, everything's on fire. Let's figure this out. How do we communicate with your audience to show, okay, you do still have that care and attention towards your artists? What plans do you have in place? How do you really just be more transparent of what was the process behind the scenes, and then what going forward are you going to do, and then stick to it and keep that accountability?
Yeah,
I've seen that on a lot of like ads that you get on any channel, and it's just like an AI generated writing tool or something. And essentially the people who are part of the gig economy in particular, they're the ones that they make a lot of comments on. They really don't like it. So you see a lot of negative feedback, not because the product isn't good or not because it's not transparent about what it's doing, but because it is transparent about what it's doing. People are very nervous that it's going to take over their jobs as well. So anyway, it's obviously it's an evolving topic. It's an interesting. I think
we also want to ask ourselves on that one too. Do we want to read content produced by AI, or do we actually care about the human effort that goes behind it and the thought? Because really those AI writing tools, they're regurgitating information that's already been written. They're not new. They're not a person creating something. It is a system building off of what people have already written. But if we lose the people that actually do the writing and the thinking behind the scenes, then those automated AI bots are going to write the same thing over and over and over and over and over again in the same template. There's no growth from there. So I think it's something we got to ask ourselves too, just as a community. Where do we draw the line? Where is this useful versus where do we actually need to put the time and effort as people to put our love and our creativity into our work?
Absolutely. And a funny tidbit, I was reading, I forgot where, they asked this question to an AI bot, if that bot is ethical, and the response was not surprising. It basically said AI is a tool, it can never be ethical. That was the response.
Some of those responses, yeah, exactly.
So you ask AI about ethics, and that's what you get.
Yeah. You're like, interesting. Thank you for your commentary.
Great. Well, Olivia, thank you so much for joining us today. I really enjoyed the conversation, and it was wonderful having you on.
Thanks, Erin. Thanks, Rigvinath. Thank you guys for having me on today.
Access the full episode of Decisions Now on our website, and don't forget to subscribe to Decisions Now podcast today.